Worried about war? Get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life. Well, buckle up for some saber rattling. Nancy Pelosi has landed in the capital of Taiwan. She took the plane that was tracked, the Spar-10. It's an Air Force plane, and she landed as expected in Taiwan. Now, China has responded to this, and Nancy Pelosi has responded to this, and you gotta know the details of this. Quick background, Taiwan is an island in East Asia. It sits at the intersection of the East and South China Seas, so it's strategically pretty important, and to some degree, Taiwan maintains a pretty good democratic standing in the world. In fact, some say that Taiwan's democracy might be more democratic than even that of Canada, which is pretty incredible. Now, Taiwan's interesting because to the northwest, you have China, to the northeast, you have Japan, to the bottom, you have the Philippines, and it ranks 20th in the world in GDP per capita, or per head, right? And so Taiwan only maintains official diplomatic relations with about 13 out of 193 countries, but unofficially, a lot of countries support Taiwan because it's a pretty industrialized nation, had a big boom throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And China lays claim to the island of Taiwan. China says, no, this is our land. We are the governing body of Taiwan. Taiwan has its own government, and so this creates a lot of tension because the official US policy is that China controls Taiwan, but unofficially, people like Nancy Pelosi and a lot of folks who support and really stand for that democracy element are pushing, which we don't want to get into the politics of do we think Nancy Pelosi stands for democracy or not, right? But a lot of folks see Taiwan as independent, and it should be independent, even though that's not the official US policy. So what kind of reaction have we gotten? Well, China's pissed, and here's what China's saying. China says now they're going to hold military drills around Taiwan. They're going to encircle the island. And between August 4th and 7th, they are going to hold military drills. So watch for this, especially if you're trying to trade on this sort of news. That will be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They say that consequences are to be borne by the U.S. side and Taiwan for these actions, and that the U.S. should stop interfering with China's internal affairs, that this takes the U.S. and Taiwan down a wrong and dangerous path, and those who play with fire will perish by it. Yes, these are statements from China and the Chinese Foreign Ministry, which condemn Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which is the first visit of someone as powerful as Pelosi, which again, arguable for some people, depending on if you're left or on the right, but she is the third most powerful person in America, and is the first time somebody that powerful has visited Taiwan since 1997. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says this seriously damages peace and stability in the Taiwanese Strait and provides stern representations and a strong protest to the U.S. They say this impacts the political foundation between the United States and China and is unacceptable. Nancy Pelosi has her response actually published in an op-ed piece by the Washington Post. She mentions China's atrocities against the Uyghurs. So that's genocide, potentially by China against the Uyghurs. Maybe we should even drop the word potentially there. We also have Nancy Pelosi highlighting drama in Tibet and Hong Kong. She also mentions that China has had a recent unacceptable rhetoric and action against Taiwan, that we must stand by democracy, and that, again, while U.S. policy remains the same, you must honor your verbal commitment to support and defend Taiwan. Again, official U.S. policy is that technically the Taiwanese government is not recognized. However, because the U.S. is such a big proponent of democracy, they have vowed to support and defend Taiwan. Although if that's anything like the support that Ukraine got, which was kind of like shipments, then maybe that's not too valuable. So this is a very kind of symbolic meeting. Some folks argue that, wait a minute, why? Like, what is the point of this? And really, the point of this, to some degree, some people say this is like kicking China while they're down because they're having a massive issue with their economy in terms of a real estate collapsing. They're having to stimulate their economy. Meanwhile, the United States is in a recession, so like who's doing it better? Anyway, obviously, the Chinese government is trying to prove that their government is stronger than the style of the United States form of government. Again, U.S. in recession. And then, of course, they've been criticized for their COVID zero policy, but Why would Pelosi go? Well, in my opinion, it's really purposefully proving that the U.S. still retains a global and regional dominance. It's basically saying, hey, that's cute, China, that you think we're playing with fire, but we stand for democracy. And we don't really give a flying F what you think because we are a regional and global hegemon, or it's just essentially a power force. And we know you actually won't do anything other than hold some drills or rattle your sabers, because that's also what you did in 1997 when Newt Gingrich went over to Taiwan. You launched a few missiles that you splashed into the ocean, and GG. Now, some people say that this is very dangerous because if China holds military drills and the Taiwanese military gets nervous, or the U.S. Defense Forces get nervous, that maybe there could be an accident, which could lead to a larger breakout of conflict. But really, what you really have here are massive sound bites coming from Nancy Pelosi, trying to show how strong democracy is. It's really kind of probably a political move, especially with the 2022 midterm elections coming up, and her dominance in the House of Representatives, and also the Democrats' power in the Senate up for question. A lot of folks saying we're going to have a big sweep of Republicans and that they'll be in control of both chambers, and that will leave Biden as a lame duck. We'll see. But really what you're getting here are threats and sound bites from both sides. I don't actually think there's anything to be nervous of here. I'm like 95% certain this is just going to be just like what we saw throughout the last decade, and especially 2018, where you have a bunch of saber rattling and maybe some sanctions here, there, or whatever, like you had with Trump, and chip sanctions and other sanctions. But folks, really, in my opinion, this is sort of like a little bit of a stressful event that creates this fear of like, oh no, but what if there's a war between China and the United States? It's not going to happen. I don't see it happening. And if anything, the United States would probably dominate China quite legitimately. Let's just do a quick comparison. China has gotten pretty good with shorter and medium-range domestic missiles. Like they could hit Guam and maybe some bases in Japan pretty well. They've also got some pretty good counter space technology, which would be a way of sort of taking off U.S. satellites by, flooding them with infrared or some sort of jamming equipment. They're pretty good in these two sectors. So again, counter space, that's when you attack satellites, or like shorter term attacks, maybe attacking American forward bases. But after that, China, I don't know. Good luck. Why? Because the United States has substantial air superiority with their F-22s and F-35 fifth-generation aircrafts. China's still only about 50% Gen 4 and 50% stuff from like the 90s, like Gen 2s and 3s. Their air defenses are strong, like their surface-to-air missiles, their SAMs are good, but the U.S. has a good advantage against these. The U.S. has substantial precision strike weapons. The Chinese anti-surface warfare missiles, like being able to basically try to target U.S. naval ships or aircraft carriers, has gotten stronger, but realistically doesn't stand a chance against the United States defenses. Now, you do have 41 submarines that China has, and they have a pretty big naval fleet. In fact, some say their naval fleet is larger when you start counting all of the smaller units that they have. They've got about 360 ships. The U.S. has about 297. But a lot of these are small patrol vessels. And the fact of the matter is, the United States against China is estimated to be able to completely sink 40% of the Chinese Navy in just 7 days, and then go around and do cleanup after that. China's probably got about 1,000 nukes. We've got somewhere around 6 times as many of those. We've got air power. We've got 13,000 military aircraft. China has 2,500. That means we've got about 5x. China has more ground forces. They've got a military about 2 million personnel large. U.S. has about 1.3 plus 800K reserves. But when you look at actual ground forces, yeah, it's still true. The U.S. has about half the size at around 500K. China at around 915K. However, the People's Liberation Army, China, is deemed to have pretty old equipment. And even though they've got more personnel, it just means they have to spend a larger portion of their budget on personnel rather than actual quality equipment that could help them win the fight. This is where the U.S. is deemed to have a big advantage, and the U.S. spends like 4 times as much money on the military as China does, maybe a little less than 4 times, but close to that. The United States spending on our defense budget is $778 billion. It's 39% of the entire globe's military expenses. China spends about $252 billion and they're ramping, but remember, a lot of this is going to personnel, and that's actually why they're trying to reduce the size of their personnel count in their military, because they realize this large personnel count is actually weighing them down. Anyway, this whole Pelosi nonsense, in my opinion, a big nothing burger, if anything, might give you a little bit of a buy the dip opportunity. Thanks so much for watching. Good luck out there. Make sure if you're concerned about this to get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life.